I handed my brother the keys to 6 rental units and watched his wife start redecorating in her mind. My lawyer stood beside me, jaw tight, silent. She had stopped arguing 3 days ago. Across the table, my brother Marcus grinned that same way he always did when he believed he had outsmarted someone. His wife Tanya squeezed his arm. Their attorney shuffled papers with the efficiency of a man eager to bill his final hour and move on. The mediator asked if I understood the terms. Yes, I said. Everyone in that room assumed I had just lost everything. They had no idea what they had agreed to take on. It had started with a phone call on a Sunday morning, the kind that reshapes your life before you even finish your coffee. My mother's voice was flat. Careful, the way she speaks when she has already decided how the conversation will go. Marcus and Tanya are talking to an attorney, she said about Grandma Josephine's properties. I set my mug down. What do you mean talking to an attorney? They think you've been taking advantage since your grandmother passed. I didn't answer immediately. Outside my kitchen window, the maple tree Grandma Jo planted when I was 7 had started to turn orange, creeping into green. I remember thinking how strange it was that trees kept changing while everything else felt frozen. Grandma Josephine Carter owned a small apartment building on Maple Ridge Road in Cedarville, Ohio. 6 units, brick exterior. Built in 1962. She bought it in 1987 with money she saved from 31 years of nursing. She ran it herself for decades, collecting rent in person, hiring handymen she trusted, keeping a ledger in a green spiral notebook stashed in her nightstand drawer. When she was diagnosed with early-stage dementia at 79, I was 24, fresh out of college with an accounting degree I hadn't yet figured out how to use. I moved back to Cedarville after a failed attempt at city life in Columbus. Directionless, a little lost, sleeping in my childhood bedroom, pretending it was temporary. Grandma Jo asked me to help with the books. Just temporarily, she said. Just until she felt sharper. That was 6 years ago. Temporarily turned into learning how to file property taxes, how to screen tenants, how to negotiate with contractors who smelled inexperience the way dogs smell fear. I replaced the roof on units 3 and 4 when the insurance company dragged its feet. I dealt with a burst pipe at 2 a.m. in January, standing in a flooded basement with a flashlight and a YouTube tutorial. I handled code inspections, fire safety compliance, lead paint abatement in the older units, and a $14,000 sewer line replacement that Grandma Jo's savings barely covered. I paid myself nothing for 6 years. Marcus, meanwhile, lived in Phoenix with Tanya. He worked in pharmaceutical sales, visited Cedarville once a year at Thanksgiving, sometimes Christmas if flights were cheap. He called Grandma Jo on her birthday, usually a day late because of the time difference. He never asked about the building. Not once. When Grandma Jo's condition worsened, we set up a power of attorney. She chose me. We did it properly, at a law office downtown with witnesses, notarization, and a cognitive assessment confirming she understood what she was signing. Marcus was informed. He said, "That makes sense. You're there." When she moved into assisted living, I covered the gap between her savings and the monthly cost. $1,400 a month from my own pocket for 19 months. I never told anyone. I just did it. She passed on a Wednesday in April, quiet in her sleep, just the way she would have wanted. I was the one who got the call. I arranged the funeral. Marcus flew in 2 days later, gave a beautiful eulogy about a woman he'd barely visited, and flew home the next morning. 3 months after the funeral, a letter arrived, not from Marcus directly, but from a law firm in Phoenix. It alleged I had exerted undue influence over my grandmother, that the power of attorney was obtained under questionable circumstances, and that I had been enriching myself through mismanagement of the Maple Ridge properties. Enriching myself. I almost laughed. My bank account held $2,300. I drove a 2012 Honda Civic with a cracked windshield I couldn't afford to fix. I found my own attorney, Diane Kessler, who practiced out of a converted Victorian on Oak Street. She was in her 50s, calm, precise, the kind of lawyer who reads everything twice and speaks once. She reviewed the documents over 2 meetings. "This is thin," she said. "You have records for everything. Bank statements, receipts, contractor invoices, inspection reports." I nodded. "Grandma Jo taught me to keep records," Diane agreed. "Family cases are unpredictable," she warned. "Courts don't like them. Judges don't like them. Juries sympathize with whoever cries first." Marcus could cry on cue. He'd done it at the funeral. Tanya had posted the video on Instagram. The first mediation session was held in a conference room that smelled like new carpet and stale coffee. Marcus sat across from me wearing a suit I had never seen before, charcoal gray, expensive looking. Tanya sat beside him in a blazer, taking notes on a leather-bound pad, like she was attending a board meeting. Their attorney, Reed Holston, spoke with the confidence of someone billing $400 an hour and assuming that made him right. He laid out their claim. The properties were Grandma Jo's legacy. Marcus was her grandson, her only other grandchild. He deserved his share more than his share, actually, because I had been self-dealing for years. Self-dealing. I had managed 6 rental units for 6 years without taking a salary, and they called it self-dealing. Diane responded calmly. She presented bank records, tax filings, maintenance logs, every dollar I had spent, every repair I had made, every tenant dispute I had resolved. The paper trail was thick. Marcus didn't look at it. He looked at me. "You always thought you were better than us," he said. That was the moment I understood this wasn't about money. It never had been. Weeks passed and the pressure mounted. My mother called regularly not to support me, but to mediate, which meant asking me to give in. "He's your brother," she said. "Families shouldn't fight over buildings." "I'm not fighting," I said. "He is. Then let him have what he wants so we can move on." I hung up and stared at the ceiling for a long time. My Aunt Carol, Grandma Jo's sister, was the only person who called to ask how I was doing. "Josephine would be furious," she said. "She trusted you for a reason." I knew, but I couldn't force people to remember that. The discovery phase was brutal. Marcus's attorney requested everything. Emails, texts, bank records going back 7 years. I provided it all because there was nothing to hide. In return, I asked for Marcus's financial records, his communication with Grandma Jo, any evidence he had contributed to the properties. His attorney objected. The mediator overruled. What came back was thin. A few birthday cards. 2 checks totaling $500 from 2019 marked for Grandma. No maintenance records. No tax contributions. No involvement whatsoever. Diane was energized. "We can end this," she said. "You have everything. He has nothing." I looked at the pile of evidence on her desk. 6 years of my life, reduced to receipts and tax forms. "I know," I said. "So let me file the motion. We can push for summary judgment." I shook my head. She stared at me. "Maya, you'll win." "I know." "Then why won't you let me do this?" I took a breath. "Because winning means standing in a courtroom, proving my brother is a liar, and then going to Thanksgiving." She leaned back in her chair. "You're thinking about Thanksgiving?" I was thinking about the next 40 years. That answer frustrated her. I could see it. She was a good lawyer, meticulous and principled, and everything in her training told her to fight. But I had already made my decision not out of weakness, not out of guilt, but out of something harder to explain. Over the next month, I did something my attorney didn't fully understand. I stopped preparing to defend and started preparing to transfer. Not sloppily, not emotionally, methodically. I reviewed every obligation attached to those 6 units, every lease agreement, every pending repair, every compliance deadline, every financial commitment I had been quietly managing. The list was long. Unit 1 had a tenant, Mrs. Okafor, 73 years old, who had lived there for 11 years on a below-market lease Grandma Jo had promised her in writing. Rent $485 a month in a market where comparable units went for $1,100. Unit 2 was occupied by a young couple, with a lease that included a maintenance clause I had negotiated, meaning the landlord, not the tenant, was responsible for all appliance repairs. The dishwasher had been replaced twice. The furnace was 14 years old. Unit 3 was vacant because I had been renovating it. I had already spent $8,200 on new flooring and electrical work. The remaining estimate was $11,500. The unit couldn't be rented until the work was completed and inspected. Unit 4 had an active code compliance case with the city. A fire safety inspection 6 months ago had flagged outdated wiring in the kitchen. I had a contractor scheduled. The city had given a compliance deadline of 90 days from the date of transfer. After that, fines accrued at $150 per day. Unit 5 had a tenant 3 months behind on rent, who was going through a personal crisis. I had been working with her, deferring payments, keeping documentation. Eviction in Ohio takes 60 to 90 days minimum and costs roughly $3,500 in legal fees. Unit 6 had a small mold issue in the bathroom that I had been treating incrementally. Full remediation, if required by inspection, would cost between $6,000 and $15,000 depending on scope. Beyond the units themselves, there were property taxes $11,400 annually, due in 2 installments. Insurance premiums $7,800 a year with a $5,000 deductible, pending increase because of claims I filed for roof and water damage. The operating account, funded from rental income and increasingly from my own savings, held $1,900 at the time of transfer. Total annual cost of ownership conservatively $68,000. Total annual rental income $52,200. I had been covering the gap personally for 3 years. None of this was hidden. Every document was filed, recorded, or stored in Grandma Joe's green notebook, which I digitized and organized into binders. Anyone who looked would find it. The problem was that no one had looked. The final mediation session was on a Tuesday. Diane and I arrived early. She was quiet, professional, resigned in a way that told me she had accepted my decision, even if she disagreed with it. Marcus and Tanya arrived late, laughing about something. Reed Holston followed them in, briefcase swinging. The mediator summarized the positions. Marcus's side wanted full ownership of the Maple Ridge properties. My side was prepared to transfer ownership voluntarily, without contest. Effective. Immediately. Reed Holston blinked. Your client is agreeing. My client is agreeing, Diane said evenly. Marcus looked at Tanya. She looked back. Neither of them had expected this. What's the catch? Marcus asked. No catch, I said. You want the properties? They're yours. The room went quiet. The mediator asked me to confirm on the record that I was acting voluntarily and without coercion. I confirmed. Diane confirmed. The documents were prepared. I signed each page carefully. When I finished, I placed the pen on the table and folded my hands. Marcus exhaled. Well, he said, smiling at Tanya, that was easier than I thought. Reed Holston gathered the documents to review. I watched him flip through the first few pages casually, then slow down. His eyes moved across the property summaries, the lease agreements, the compliance notices, the financial statements I had attached as part of the transfer package. He turned a page, then another. Then he went back to the beginning and started again. His expression didn't change all at once. It was gradual, like watching someone walk into cold water. First the feet, then the knees, then the full body shock. Just reviewing, he murmured. But his hand had stopped turning pages. He was staring at the compliance timeline for Unit 4, the one with the 90-day deadline and the $150 daily fines. Marcus noticed. What's wrong? Reed Holston didn't answer immediately. He flipped to the operating account summary, $1,900. Then to the annual expense sheet, $68,000. Then to the income sheet, $52,200. I could see him doing the math. Tanya leaned over. Reed. He looked up at Marcus, then at me. I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. I just sat there. The way you sit when you've already done the hardest part and the rest belongs to someone else. Diane said nothing. She didn't need to. We left the building separately. In the parking lot, Diane walked beside me in silence until we reached my car. Then she stopped. How long did you know? She asked. Know what? That the numbers didn't work. That he couldn't sustain it. I opened my car door. I've known since the first year. Grandma Joe knew too. She just didn't want to sell. Diane shook her head slowly. He's going to call you. I know. What will you tell him? The truth. The same truth that's been in those binders the whole time. The first call came 11 days later, not from Marcus, but from Tanya. Her voice was different now, stripped of the polished confidence she had worn in mediation. She spoke quickly, nervously. We didn't realize the taxes were this high, she said. And there's a city notice about Unit 4, something about fines. Yes, I said. You'll need a licensed electrician. I can give you the name of the one I used. How much? She asked. The quote she got was $9,200. Silence. And the tenant in Unit 5 hasn't paid for months? She continued. I'm working with her, I said. Working with her? She owes thousands. She hesitated. She's a single mother going through a custody battle. I documented everything. You can pursue eviction if you choose. More silence. Maya, she said, and I could hear something cracking beneath her voice. Did you know this would happen? I knew what ownership required, I said. I've known for 6 years. Marcus called the next day. He didn't start with accusations this time. He started with a question. How did you do this? Every month I showed up, I said. I learned. I made mistakes and fixed them. The insurance company is raising the premium. I know. I filed 2 claims last year. That triggers a review. And Mrs. Okafor's lease? We can't raise her rent. Not without breaking a written agreement Grandma Joe made. You could try, but she'd have grounds to sue. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, You could have told me all this. It was in the documents, Marcus. Every page your attorney had them. He didn't explain it. That's between you and him. Over the following weeks, reality settled over Marcus and Tanya, the way winter settles over Ohio. Slowly, then all at once, the furnace in Unit 2 failed, held in November. The mold remediation in Unit 6 was flagged during a routine inspection and escalated to a mandatory repair order. The city issued the first round of fines for Unit 4, $150 per day, accumulating silently like snow. Marcus stopped calling with questions and started calling with frustration. This is impossible, he said one evening. We're bleeding money! I listened. You knew. You let us walk into this. I let you have what you asked for, I said. That's different. It's the same thing. No, Marcus, it's not. You asked for ownership. Ownership includes everything. The rent checks and the burst pipes, the income, and the code violations. You can't take one without the other. He hung up. My mother called that night. Your brother is overwhelmed, she said. I was overwhelmed for 6 years, I replied quietly. She didn't have an answer for that. 3 months after the transfer, Marcus's attorney contacted Diane. The tone had shifted completely. No demands, no allegations, just questions. Was there a way to restructure ownership? Could the properties be placed in a trust? Could I be brought back in as a manager? Diane relayed the message without commentary. What do you want to do? She asked. I'll answer questions, I said. I'll share what I know, but I won't take it back. Fair. And I won't manage it for free again. She almost smiled. Also fair. The meeting happened in January at a coffee shop near the courthouse. Marcus came alone this time. No Tanya, no attorney, no suit. He wore a fleece and jeans. He looked tired. In a way, I recognized the deep tiredness that comes from carrying something heavier than you expected. We sat across from each other with paper cups between us. He didn't speak for a while. Then he said, I owe you an apology. I didn't understand what you were doing all those years. I thought you were just, I don't know, living there for free using Grandma's property. I know what you thought. The electrician bill for Unit 4 was $10,600. We had to take out a personal loan. I nodded. And Mrs. Okafor's lease. Tanya wanted to fight it. Our attorney said we'd lose. You would? He ran his hand over his face. How did you afford all this? I didn't always. Some months I chose between fixing the building and fixing my car. The building won every time. He stared at his coffee. You called me self-dealing. Yes, I'm sorry. I let those words sit for a moment, not because I needed them to hurt, but because they needed space to be real. Thank you, I said. Tanya thinks we should sell. That's your decision. What would Grandma Joe want? I thought about her green notebook, her careful handwriting, the way she walked the property every morning, checking locks and pulling weeds. She'd want it taken care of, I said, however that looks. He nodded slowly. Would you help us? Not run it, just help us figure out what to do. I'll think about it. I did think about it for weeks. I walked past Maple Ridge on my evening runs and looked at the building differently now. The way you look at something that shaped you but no longer defines you. Eventually, I agreed to consult not as a favor, as a paid arrangement, documented and professional. Diane drafted the contract. Marcus signed without complaint. Tanya signed too, though I noticed her hand move slower than it used to. Over the next few months, I taught them what Grandma Joe had taught me. That property isn't a trophy. It's a relationship with tenants, with the city, with the building itself. Every wall has a history. Every pipe has a lifespan. Every dollar going out is a decision about what you value. Marcus surprised me. He actually learned. He started attending city council meetings about housing codes. He flew in monthly instead of yearly. He called Mrs. Okafor by her first name and brought her groceries when the weather was bad. Tanya adjusted more slowly, but she did adjust. She stopped talking about remodeling and started talking about budgets. She organized the files the way I taught Marcus, using the same system Grandma Jo started with her green notebook. My mother never quite apologized for taking Marcus's side, but she started calling me more often, and the conversations shifted from let it go to tell me how things are going. That was enough, not because I don't deserve an apology, but because I stopped needing one to feel whole. My Aunt Carol came to visit last spring. We stood together in front of the Maple Ridge building, watching the sunset paint the brick in amber. "Josephine would be proud of you," she said, "for giving it up, for knowing what it was worth, not the building, the lesson." I think about that a lot now. I think about how I spent 6 years proving my love through silence, receipts, frozen January mornings, and flooded basements, and how none of that mattered until I stopped doing it and let the absence speak for itself. I don't regret giving the properties to Marcus. I don't regret the 6 years I spent managing them for nothing. What I regret is believing for a long time that sacrifice without acknowledgement was the same as love. It isn't. Love requires being seen. And sometimes the only way to be seen is to step out of the shadows and let people notice what's missing. If you carry more than your share, quietly, without complaint or recognition, hear this. Your silence is not your strength. It might feel noble. It might feel necessary. But the people around you will never understand what you do until you stop doing it. That's not manipulation. That's clarity. Boundaries aren't walls, they're windows. They let people see what was always there. And if you've been demanding something you didn't fully understand, it's not too late to look closer. Not at what you think you deserve, but at what it actually costs. Every building has a foundation. Every family does too. The question isn't who owns it. The question is who's been holding it up. Thank you for listening.